and you're watching a special programme here on Arise News. Buckingham Palace has announced that Queen Elizabeth II has died at the age of 96. She was a symbol of stability and continuity in a changing world. Her life underpinned by the devotion to duty that we've heard so many refer to, fulfilling a promise she made on her 21st birthday in 1947, declaring that her whole life would be dedicated to the service of her country and the Commonwealth, of which Nigeria is a part. Britain's Queen Elizabeth II dying at the age of 96. After coming to the throne in 1952, she became the oldest monarch in the world and the longest reigning in British history. She was an instantly recognizable figure to billions of people across the world. This was her Platinum Jubilee year, marking 70 years since she succeeded her father, King George VI, in 1952. As well as the United Kingdom, the Queen was also head of state in 14 Commonwealth countries around the world. For most of her subjects, she was the only monarch they've ever known, featuring on stamps, banknotes, and coins, and immortalized in popular culture. Faith Orr takes a look back at her life.
Queen Elizabeth II was born Princess Elizabeth Alexandra Mary on the 21st of April in 1926. She wasn't destined for the throne. Elizabeth spent her early years between homes in London and Windsor, enjoying the life of a royal alongside her younger sister Margaret. But that all changed in 1936, when her father's elder brother abdicated the throne. King Edward VIII had reigned for less than a year. When her father took the throne as King George VI, young Elizabeth became his heir apparent. This was a role she took seriously. She made the first of her famous radio broadcasts during World War II from Windsor Castle, when she told the children of Britain that in the end all will be well, for God will care for us and give us victory and peace. Elizabeth joined the war effort personally in 1945. She trained side by side with other British women to be a driver and mechanic. It was just the start of her public service.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and to the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong.
One of the defining themes of her life was her long marriage to Prince Philip. She first met him when she was only 13. The pair were distant cousins. King George was initially hesitant about the match. He didn't deem Philip suitable. But the pair were married in 1947 at Westminster Abbey. Their eldest son, Prince Charles, was born the following year, and daughter Anne arrived in 1950. The marriage was tested when King George died earlier than expected in February 1952, and Elizabeth assumed the role of British monarch. She was just 25 years old. Her official coronation took place on the 2nd of June 1953 in Westminster Abbey. For the first time, the ceremony was broadcast on television. Her coronation marked the end of Philip's naval career. He would spend the rest of his life by her side. Queen Elizabeth started her reign as she meant to go on, with her longest ever Commonwealth tour. It lasted 6 months and took in 44,000 miles. The Queen would remain committed to the Commonwealth throughout her life, even as countries gained independence from Britain. Her commitment to public life at times took a toll on her family. There were challenging periods, particularly her eldest son Charles's marriage to Diana Spencer. He was 32 and she was just 20 when they wed. It would ultimately end in divorce. Then in 1997, Princess Diana was killed in a car crash in Paris. The fallout from her death was one of the few times the Queen was thought to be out of step with public opinion. While crowds mourned at the gates of Buckingham Palace, and something of a national hysteria built up, the Queen stayed in Balmoral in Scotland with Charles and Diana's 2 sons, William and Harry. It's said she made the decision to protect her grandsons. They were ultimately thrust into the spotlight, walking behind their mother's coffin on the day of her funeral. Family would cause the Queen yet more problems when Harry, said to be her favourite grandson, married American actress Meghan Markle. The pair decided royal life was not for them and relinquished their roles, moving to the US. The couple made scathing comments about life in the royal family, with Meghan saying one member had made racist remarks. While her personal life wasn't always smooth sailing, the Queen always made sure her public duty didn't falter. She would maintain a love of dogs and horses throughout her life, particularly evident during trips to Balmoral Castle. There, she occasionally entertained foreign dignitaries. The Queen lived through 14 Prime Ministers and American presidents. Winston Churchill was rumoured to be her favourite, with their weekly chats extending well beyond the designated 30 minutes. The pair were so close, the Queen even broke protocol at Churchill's funeral by arriving before his family. She saw huge technological advances in her lifetime, joining in with social media in 2014 when she sent her first tweet, signing it Elizabeth R. The Queen became immortalised in the show The Crown, which dramatised many moments from the monarch's life, including an intruder breaking into her bedroom in 1982. But one of the images that many will remember is of Queen Elizabeth II casting a lonely figure at the funeral of her husband of 73 years. She got back to public duties quickly after the death of Philip, remaining in her later years how she started her reign, as a stoic figurehead who put the needs of the country far above her own.
And that is remembering the Queen of the United Kingdom there, and of course of the Commonwealth, Queen Elizabeth II, who has died today. And tributes have been pouring in from around the world, not least of course Nigeria, where she had close relationships with several leaders in this country, and of course a former Nigerian was the former head of the Commonwealth, the Secretary General of the Commonwealth from 1990 through to 2000. His name, of course, Chief Emeka Anyaoku. He sent in this tribute. He said, "I have received with great sadness the news of the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II. She'll be greatly missed in the United Kingdom, where she was a beloved and longest reigning head of state, and also throughout the Commonwealth, where she was a greatly respected and much admired head of the association. Her Majesty was a most remarkable and wise head whose standing and influence enabled the Commonwealth Association to survive its existential crisis. She was also a symbol of dignity and continuity, diverse in that diverse Commonwealth of now 56 member nations. The memories of the interactions, this is him speaking, of my wife and myself with Her Majesty during my 10 years as Commonwealth Secretary General will remain with us as long as we live." And that's Chief Emeka Anyaoku, who was the Commonwealth Secretary General between 1990 and the year 2000. And tributes, of course, still coming in, not least from her son, who will now become King Charles III. He said the death of his beloved mother was a moment of great sadness for him and his family, and that her loss would be deeply felt around the world. And we're looking at pictures there, of course, of the great monarch who had a long association with many Nigerian leaders. With me in the studio, Arise News analyst Abiodun Adeniyi, to tell us more. And as I mentioned there, Professor Abiodun, she was of course somebody who came to Nigeria and traveled across Africa many times.
Yeah, she was always around the places, around Commonwealth nations, very unfortunate that she has to go. Of course, as a nonagenarian, was quietly expectant, but because of the good health she has enjoyed over the years, we were thinking that she will make it as a centenarian, But after the death of her husband, Prince Philip, well, anything could happen. Well, it has finally come. Very unfortunate, not just for Britain, not just for the Commonwealth, but for the entire world. For the role she represents. As a peace builder, as a consensus builder, as a monarch of repute. As head of an important nation, the United Kingdom, that is one of the strongest economies in the world, a world power. A country with significant with great historical relevance in the evolution of nations across continents, And of course, she has been around the longest, like you rightly said in your introduction. Coming after Prince George VI, and reigning up to these
70 years on the throne.
Yeah,
that's
very, very unprecedented. She's a lucky woman, no doubt. But our time has come. And the deed is done, But of course, like Shakespeare said, all the elements were completely missed in her. She has gone. She remains a woman, and her death will continue to be celebrated in distant places, not just in close quarters like Nigeria, where as a former colonial vassal, but across the world. Again, consistent with what Shakespeare told us that. When beggars die, there are no comments seen, but the heavens themselves blaze forth at the death of princess. Elizabeth II came, she saw, she conquered, and what we cannot say now is that may God rest his heart, may God rest her soul.
Well, absolutely. And I wonder where you were when you heard of her death and what your reaction was to it.
That's fine. You see, they were good question, Charles. There were signs this afternoon. I saw the report, signs that doctors have made calls to our relations, to our offspring to start coming to the Balmoral. And we saw the signs. So there were apprehension, I think, first of all, I want to give commendation to the medics, for seeing the signs that the end was near. And it reminds me of when was this man that contested with Barack Obama in the first election? I've forgotten his name. In the US, I remember at some point, when he was also going to die, how they made this call-less relation.
You mean the senator?
Yeah, the senator. I forgot his. I remember who was a former naval officer.
Yeah.
So that's precision. The precision of science. They saw all the signs, all the symbols were there that the end time had come. Probably for the Queen, and they got it right. So it was important that she was passed on at a time where all her close offspring, some of her close offsprings, were around. She was at the twilight of her life. She became increasingly calmer. Always looking for peace, despite the convulsion in the family, despite the controversies. She stayed above the fray. She was elevated. She managed the differentiations around the family members very well. She was a good calmer. That's why I said a good controller of temperature. And of course she'll be remembered for that. It will continue to be her legacy. But going forward again, of course, we have to be expectant that her son, Prince Charles, who's going to take continue from where she stopped, will also sustain the legacy of the great Queen, realizing the importance of the monarch, to the British, to the British people, and irrespective of arguments in circles that the monarchy is getting outdated, is becoming too traditional, that we're in the 21st century, they should begin to move from monarchy, considering the cost of sustaining them. Well, these are academic arguments, debates in critical circles, but of course we know that it's going to take time, for this to happen, because the monarchy is still very significant to the tradition of that country.
Right.
Even the national emblem, the symbol of their nationhood, is all around God blessing the Queen. Now it's going to change to God blessing the King.
Yeah, probably. God bless the King. Right. Okay. Thank you very much for the moment, Professor Abiodun, Adeniyi, and.